I don't care about dating. I actually don't like dating. I mean, who likes dating nowadays? What I love is the idea of human connection. What I love is going to a place and trying to understand the psychology of the people that live there because culture plays such a huge role in shaping who we are. Hey everyone, and welcome to the Beyond Borders podcast, where I sit down weekly with guests from all around the world to chat culture, dating, and human experiences. So join in and let's break down those barriers together. Hey everybody, and welcome to the very first episode of my podcast, Beyond Borders. For those of you who know me from my YouTube channel, Dating Beyond Borders, welcome. This podcast is going to resemble my YouTube channel. But the reason I called it Beyond Borders and not Dating Beyond Borders is simply because I don't want to be limited by the term dating. And I'll get into it in a second. For those of you who don't know me, welcome. My name is Marina, and I will tell you a little bit about myself so that you know exactly what you're getting into by tuning into this podcast. If you are at the gym, working out, or out for a run, this is a perfect little episode to listen to. It's going to be as real as it gets, or at least a very unedited version. I'm purposefully going to try not to edit anything out, which is just very difficult. Actually, that's a lie. I'm going to edit out the very first beginning of me just messing this up completely. But once I started again, I'm like, okay, no, I'm going to keep going and I'll try to be as authentic as I can be, which is very difficult when there's a camera in front of you and the microphone, and you know that a lot of people are going to be tuning in and listening to you. So, a little bit of a background for anyone who is new to me, new to the podcast, or has no idea what I do, or even is a long time fan of the channel, but doesn't really know how I got started and, how I create the videos. So, about me, uh, I am originally from Moscow, Russia, and my parents are Russian, Ukrainians, where my mom is Russian and my dad is Ukrainian. And I came to Canada when I was 12 years old, which is why a lot of people often get confused about my whereabouts. I don't look stereotypically Russian. So I get called a lot of nationalities. I started the channel Dating Beyond Borders because I would say, frustrated with the dating scene in Toronto, Canada, where I moved when I was 12. And when I was around, I would say 25, I started traveling more and more. Not as much as I do now, of course, but definitely a lot more. And I began feeling like I connected better with people from different countries. At this point, I still don't know if it's because I didn't really fit the North American mentality, whatever the case may be. I started dating um, abroad, and it is at this time that I got very curious about the idea of dating around the world. Like, I've had experiences with dating European guys and Latin American guys specifically. And so I started to get fascinated with, how communication was a little bit different, and or rather very different depending on where this person was from. In general, just it opened up like a whole new world for me with dating these guys. And I actually found out a lot about myself in the process as well. Like, um, okay, there's like kind of a more Eastern European part of me, which was raised with the expectation that the man should pay on the first date, on the second date, even maybe on the third date. And then also that expectation that as a woman, I should also do certain things to take care of this guy that I'm dating. And this was, of course, back in the day. Nowadays, I would say that Eastern Europe as well, like where I'm from, Moscow, a lot of the ideals are changing as well. But anyway, so I would go on dates with these guys from different countries, and I was like, "What? He didn't pay the bill? What? This is, who is this guy? This is so unattractive." But then I would start looking into the culture, and actually, the first thing I would do is I would start googling and saying like, "Oh, what to expect when you're dating a Dutch man?" And of course, I would get a lot of these horrible articles like, "Oh, Dutch men are." very attractive. Those kind of things. Or Italians are very romantic, like things that articles that said nothing. And this is, remember, back in the day when the topic of international dating wasn't really something that was talked about at all. Like, I think the only articles I could find were articles on dating Eastern European women and like dating Latinas and these romance tours. That was the whole association with the international dating in general. Like, it was tacky, and it was um very just it was gross. So there wasn't really much, there weren't many articles when I tried to look into it, like, oh, what should I know before I date this culture? And so I slowly but surely began writing down my own experiences with dating around the world. I even have a blog. I still have my blog, and I wrote it under a different name. And it was about my kind of international relationships and things like that. So it's a very personal blog, and I did write it under a different name for a reason. And I just wanted to kind of share my experiences, and actually got quite a lot of traction. People were really interested. Sometimes I reread it when I'm really bored, and the kind of things that I said there I would never say now. Was like, are all Italian men like this? So it was a lot of generalization, obviously, and but it was fun. Like, it was just, I would jot down my experiences, and in those stories, I would find some really funny things, and a lot of things that kept repeating with the same culture, and slowly, when people talk about like the aha moment, like, oh, all of a sudden I wanted to start my new business. It was just like an aha moment. I think that's a thing that often happens in the movies. You see someone like, oh wow, why didn't I think of this? And then all of a sudden they start working hard at creating their business. But I think for most of us, the idea kind of creeps into your mind, and then you don't really know what it is, but you kind of become interested in it. And so it's more like through writing these blogs that I started thinking about maybe creating my very first video. And at this point, I was teaching. I was a teacher. I'm a high school teacher, a certified high school teacher. Um, a high school teacher that never really wanted to get into teaching. It was more a profession that was inevitable because I finished. Um, I got a degree in English literature and theater, which actually did come in handy as time would tell. But English literature, and there wasn't much else to do with English literature other than write books. I don't know that you need an English literature degree for that, but okay, that's one of the ways to go about it, is to write books, potentially get into teaching, maybe get a master's in one thing or another. But I kind of took in my opinion, the lazy way. Yeah. Now, that is not to say that, of course, teachers have a very noble profession. And I think people that go into it with the love of teaching, that's great. And I think that's with any job, in my opinion. If it's something you're genuinely excited about and you're passionate about, then it doesn't really matter what you do. But anyways, long story short, I was a high school teacher, and back when I got the idea for the first video, I was offered a job in Panama in Latin America. And I remember going to Latin America, and I became friends with Natasha, my Russian friends. And one day I just approached her and I said, Natasha, what do you think about creating this video? I think it's such a stupid video idea. And I don't know if you want to go through with this, but it's just, the idea is to just walk around, and maybe we can get guys from all around the world to share their opinions, and to see how the differences are between dating different cultures, dating different men. Like, what do they think about paying? What do they think about what they're attracted to, sex, and all those kind of things? And thankfully, thank you, Natasha, for actually saying, yeah, cool, okay, let's try it. I think maybe if she'd said no, there's a potential that the channel would never have been born. Just kind of funny, right? It only takes one person to crush a dream. And she said yes. So we went around Latin America. We went around Latin America. We went around Panama, not Latin America. But Panama is in Latin America. There's two Panamas, just for the records. And we went around and we basically interviewed men from different countries. And in hindsight, it's a funny story, and it was hilarious. But back then, it seemed like we were out on this incredible documentary type project, and we had this terrible Nikon camera, and we had no idea about filming, and we obviously had no audio equipment. Um, and at the end, we would sit down on her balcony and kind of go over it and say, like, okay, what clips should we keep in? And we got some very unwanted propositions. I write about it in my book, Sex Before Coffee, about guys saying, like, hey, girls, yeah, we'll answer any question you have, but let's grab some vodka and go to your place and we can do it there. So, which we didn't do for the record. But yeah, a lot of creepy guys and a lot of guys that were kind of cool to answer the questions. And at the end, we got this 20-minute video, which was terrible. If you guys actually want to take a look, it's the very first video on the channel. I keep it there for a reason, you know? I keep it there just to kind of sometimes look at the progress that I've made. But I was so, so proud of that video. And when I came back to Canada, I posted that video. I put it up on YouTube and I was like, I posted it on my Facebook back when we used to post everything on our Facebook, all our 20,000 photos from our trip to Mykonos. Anyways, I posted that and I was like, wow, this is so exciting. And people were like, oh my God, good for you. Back when internet wasn't as saturated as it is now, right? Like now, no one could give a damn about another video. There's just such an oversaturation of content out there. But back then, people were excited about it. And I was like, this was the aha moment for me. This was the moment where I was like, I love this. I love this. I want to keep going. I don't know what it is yet, but I want to figure it out. And if I could give one advice to my younger self, it would be to figure it out. I understand the concept of trial and error, but like going back and just looking at the years that I wouldn't say lost because every experience is an experience, right? Positive or negative. But I think if I just figured out the direction that I wanted to go in instead of randomly going left and right and left and center, the channel would have become a success much earlier and I would have gotten way further much earlier. I think I knew I wanted to talk about culture, but I think my ideas were a bit outdated. There weren't that many videos on YouTube that I could compare myself with. I didn't really know the direction. The trends were very, very different than they are now. I actually love the trends now, and the trends now are a little bit more authentic. And that's part of the reason that I'm launching a podcast, not because I'm trying to keep up with the trends, but because I think authenticity is one of the most interesting parts of looking at anything, you know? And back then, I was trying to kind of play on the stereotypes. Oh, are Puerto Ricans Latin lovers? That's actually one of the videos that I've made. Cringe. I look at the video, I'm like, did I actually make a video? Are Puerto Ricans Latin lovers? And then I went to Puerto Rico and I was trying to basically get every Latin American man to play the Latin lover. I actually hired a guy to play. It was ridiculous. I actually deleted that video. I just like, there are some videos that I want to keep on the channel, but that one was too much to handle. So I deleted that. And afterwards, I think I went to Argentina and I did something like, oh, Argentinian sweet talkers. And they are. That's actually like, I kept that video. That was not terrible. It was a little bit better. But overall, like, I was so, so bad. The videos I was making and the opportunities I had to just film incredible content. I was 3 months in Argentina and I could have filmed so much. And I don't know, I had these weird projects in mind that were more documentary suited than they were YouTube suited. But it is what it is. You know, you live and you learn. And I think one of the biggest lessons that I could give you guys is, without sounding too cliche, is we're all human, right? Like we all make terrible videos if we're on YouTube. And some people give up and some people keep going, and not keep going blindly, but keep going, like recalibrating. This didn't work. Okay, what do I actually want to do? Anyway, so that was my younger self. And the reason I went to Argentina is because I took 3 months off, and I was turning 30 and I was feeling really, really depressed about my life. And I was working in a job downtown Toronto, like teaching English. And I loved my job. It was a wonderful job. I was working with English students. I was teaching like English as a second language. My students were my friends. They were from all the different countries in the world. It was awesome, and actually so great for what I do now, because a lot of culture, like awareness, was even made stronger when I was working with these students from all around the world. Like, it was so funny. I had Brazilian students and I had Japanese students, and I just remember Brazilians, they were so um like they were learning English, but they were just like barely doing their homework, coming to class late, chittering, chattering. And Japanese, they were like deep in their notebooks, as the stereotype is, like writing everything down, but they were too shy to speak. And at the end of the day, Brazilians got way further with the language because they didn't care. They just kept speaking. So I think that's a solid advice right there. Like, not that you shouldn't care, but you should practice your art, whether it's the art of English or whether it's the art of um, creation, whether it's the art of speaking on camera. Like this is not natural for me, and I'll get into it a little bit more on what I'm going to do next, and the change that I'm making in the channel, which also doesn't feel comfortable. So I think the difference between you now and the difference of you and you creating incredible content or you reaching that goal that you want is just practice. And the more podcasts I listen to, because I'm just deep into podcasts on business now, one thing stands out, and that's action. Do something about it, right? Like that's action. Anyways, going back to my a little bit of my life story. I have a feeling this podcast is going to turn out to be much longer than I initially intended, but yeah. So basically, I was teaching English at that time, and it was after I went to Argentina and I came back to Canada that I found out that due to low enrollment, unfortunately, I won't be able to keep my position in the school. It was a private school, so enrollment played a huge part. And seeing as how I've spent the last like year or so not really loving what I was doing and having this amazing job, but I would come into my office. I had an office, a little office, and I would come into my office, and first things first, I would turn on Twitter. And I just remember feeling like, oh my God, look at all these adventures people are having. And actually, it helped me, kind of made me feel like the sky's the horizon. There's so many opportunities. Like, I don't know, like the idea of my channel, it has, and it still gives me this magical feeling. I don't know how to describe it to you guys, but it's kind of like when I think about it, it's colorful, it's full of opportunity, it's full of excitement. Like I go through phases, of course. Don't get me wrong. It's not like I wake up every day like loving what I do. I sometimes just do what I do because there's no other way around it. You get sick, your life sucks, your personal life sucks. And the last thing you want is to work on the channel, or your personal life is doing so great. You don't want to think about work and you want to focus on other things. But overall, I would say that whatever you're doing, I would hope you have some passion for it because for me, it was this opportunities. It was this incredible feeling. And yeah, a couple of months later, I was let go from my job. And I just remember two feelings. First one was, of course, like, oh, shit, shit, shit. What do I do? I have 1 year of unemployment. Thank you, Canada, to figure out what I want to do. And another part of me was so excited. So excited. Like, what am I going to do next? Am I going to do this channel next? And I remember I had this 1 year to figure it out. I didn't know what the hell I was doing. My channel was at 3,000 subscribers. I would hire people. I would talk to people like, how do I get it to 5,000 subscribers? I had no idea. No idea. Like, what do I do? And I got all sorts of advice. And yeah, it was kind of all useless. And I spent the next year trying to figure it all out. And the one thing that helped, I remember it was like a booklet, like some old fashioned booklet on YouTube, how to succeed on YouTube. And it said something like post regularly, tell people to subscribe, like the basics of what we know now. But I was like, okay, I'm going to do that. And I'm going to try to create some series that I don't know. There was this one series that I had in mind that I was super excited about, which was called You Know You're Dating. And in short, that's the series that I say took my channel from 3,000 subscribers to 100,000 subscribers in a year. But that 1 year I took to figure out what I wanted to do. I applied to jobs left and right and center, but with 3,000 subscribers, you don't get any money. I would often rent out my apartment on Airbnb and just live with my mom because I was like, I need to make money somehow. I really don't know how. And I remember it was like at the worst of times that I went into my YouTube page, creator, hub, whatever it was called at the time, and I realized I had $1,000 on my that I'd made on AdSense. And I was like, wow, this is incredible. I actually made $1,000. And Natasha, the friend that helped me out with my filming of the terrible Panamanian video on men, told me one great idea. She said, look, I know you don't want to stay in Toronto. I never was a huge fan of the city, never really felt like resonated with me. And I also wanted to keep the flexibility of traveling. I've walked around and I did all these job interviews and job coaching and training. And I just was like, no, I don't want to do this. I don't want to go back to this world again. I want to do the YouTube, side of it. And she said, look, why don't you just get a job teaching English online to Chinese students? And then in your spare time, you can keep doing the channel. And I was like, okay, that sounds like a great idea. So I started doing that. I got a job, I remember, with VIP Kids. And I would get up at 5 in the morning because Chinese time, and I would teach kids. And I would do that until 10 in the morning. And then I would sleep like an hour because I need a lot of sleep. And I literally can function with less than 8 hours of sleep. It's terrible. And then I would go ahead and I would like work on my channel for the rest of the day. And I was so excited. And I was like, okay, and I think this was one of the coolest parts of running the channel, was like so many opportunities and no one was doing what I was doing. I was like the first in this kind of sphere, and it was simple. It was like what you have to know when you're dating people from different countries, right? So I narrowed it down finally. And I remember taking off like 2 months, taking off. I mean, I was still working and teaching kids when I was traveling. I just had to bring a lot of props because you need props when you're teaching little kids. And honestly, I looked so ridiculous. I was like carrying apples and monkeys and all these letters and whiteboards and all these things that I had to use this really annoying high pitched voice. But I went to Europe and I was like, I'm going to prove it. I'm going to prove to everyone that I can do both the channel and I can teach and I can make it work. So I did that. I would teach in the mornings in hostel dorms, in hostel rooms. It was horrible, really, really, really horrible, terrible experience. But I would go out and I would film the rest of the time. And then I started doing that a little bit more, like traveling. I started filming in Toronto as well, like trying to get that. And in short, yeah, like in a year, I managed to get 100,000 subscribers, which was, yeah, it was, I think it was a kind of a golden time as well because Toronto had a YouTube studio at the time. And so I got my 100,000 subscribers in the YouTube space. Actually organized the party for me. They gave me the button. It was cool. Like I invited all the cast and all the people that have worked with me. A couple of years after I was teaching English to Chinese kids and I was doing this part time, I got enough sponsors. My channel was doing very well. The views were skyrocketing and it was great. I was onto something and I got enough sponsors where I said, okay, I'm quitting my Chinese job. It's just going to be YouTube AdSense and sponsors and all that kind of jazz. Cool. So I started doing it full time and I had to pinch myself. Like, this is exactly what I wanted to do when I was working in the office, when I was teaching. I was just wanted to have this incredible freedom. Long story short, guys, I'm not going to get into the specifics of it. If you want me to put out a specific podcast on what it is like to run a YouTube channel, I can definitely do that. My aim with this podcast is not to make it a business podcast, but it's always very exciting to share my little journey, or my rather my very very complicated journey, and it hasn't been smooth. I would say for a lot of YouTubers, it's a smooth road up or a viral trip up. But for most of us, it's an up and down. And unfortunately, in the last couple of years, and I would say that's after COVID, YouTube has really let me down in a way. And algorithm changes and a lot of content has really caused a shift in the way, um, the amount of views that I get and the subscriber growth. So it's been disheartening to say the least. In those few years, I definitely traveled and filmed abroad. I got to go to Iceland, which maybe is how you know me. That was super cool and something very interesting, such an interesting place. And we traveled to a few different places. And my goal has always been to be like, first, when I started the channel, I was like, I don't even want to be in the videos. I just want it to be a brand. But the problem with having a brand is that people expect very different things from you, and they expect the quality to be incredible. And you can get kind of stuck in that loop of quality, 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 quality. But without the personal touch, um, something is missing, you know? So the next part, I was like, okay, well, I can still do um, travel stuff and show my face, but I just don't want to show my face too much. I don't want it to be personal. And a lot of times that I would meet people and they would say, "Oh, you're a vlogger." I would say, "No, no, no, I'm not a vlogger. I'm not a vlogger. I'm travel with a camera person. I'm very professional. It's like Netflix." I okay, I wasn't that vain, but I never wanted to be a vlogger. I was like, I'm too old for this. I don't want to hold a camera up to my face and do it all from scratch. And I wanted to have that nice, cool Netflixy feel. But the problem that you have with the Netflixy feel is that I now looking back at it, as much as I love those travel videos, I just don't think they're authentic enough. It's not me. Like this is me. This is you guys seeing me. But when there's a videographer out there holding a camera to your face, try to be authentic. It's very hard to make that happen. And while I did travel with my long term videographer for a very long time, like Iceland and Texas and Cuba, we filmed so much stuff together. He was a very comfortable for person for me to be around. We slept in the same like houses, and we spent hours in the car driving place to place. So that was great. But working with local videographers, because it's so expensive to bring someone over, I simply don't have the budget for it, especially when sponsors are not paying. That's a hassle. And then you're working with a completely new person that you don't know, and you also have to be yourself in front of the camera. That's really, really tough. I think even documentaries, they come into the house of a person and then they kind of just hang out with this person without even turning the camera on before they start filming something. It's just the way to get someone used to the camera. So it's something that I've been trying to avoid, being a vlogger for a very long time, which is why stay tuned until the end when I tell you the updates. Yeah, that was kind of the route I was taking. And, a lot of it was acted out videos, you're dating, and studio videos. And those did very well. I did sexiest language back before everyone decided to steal it from me. I'm not even gonna, I mean, literally steal. BuzzFeed was the first. And the worst is reading the comments and having someone say, "Oh, you stole this video from BuzzFeed." Like, no, guys, please check the dates. I actually published this video first. So you really have to stop taking things so personally when you do these videos. But of course, everyone has the creative license to steal your ideas. They still do. And they get a lot more views on it simply because they publish a lot more often. Unfortunately, being in a very small team, or rather, me being a team and constantly like hiring people to do this and that, it's very hard to post often, which is why I was faced with a choice, and that was, do I publish videos more often, which I honestly cannot afford to do, and hope that it gets the traction and sponsors become interested and YouTube pays more because you obviously get paid based on views? Or do I stick to the quality versus quantity? And besides the fact that I would be crazy overworked with publishing more than once a week, quality. For me, quality always wins. And I decided to stick to once a week. But then I was like, okay, if I'm going to stick to once a week, then I really need to up what I'm doing. And not just in terms of quality of production, because I think that we've had that nailed for years, but doing what I want to do. And doing what I want to do is very, very difficult. And it involves changing the tactics to do vlogging, which I've been trying to avoid for years. Like, I don't even know how to work a camera properly. I'm literally learning how to work a camera day after day. Yeah, it's ridiculous. But honestly, there's never a better time to learn everything. And I think at this point, I can say I've learned so many parts of this production business that I could probably start my own business. I don't know how to film still, but um, I've learned so much of editing. I've pre-edited. I edit all my reels. I'm kind of, what do they call, a personality type A, where and it's not just that. It's not that I just wanted like a certain way, but I wanted a certain way. But my issue with delegating my reels and my shorts is that I love like manually making the video. putting the video in and seeing the reaction. It's like a baby, It's such a wonderful feeling that I feel like if someone else did that, I'd be like, "Ugh, I miss it. It's not the smartest move. The business podcasts tell you to delegate. And at this point, I have one assistant and I'm hiring a second assistant. And of course, the goal is now to grow the business. But back to the basics. In 3 weeks, I'm going to Sweden and Estonia and maybe Norway if budget allows me to film videos and the kind of videos that I feel like are missing on the internet. Um, the kind of videos that I wish I would be watching. I've looked through what is published about Sweden and Estonia, and I want to see more on how it would be to make friends in the most difficult country for expats. Swedes are quite difficult to become friends with, and I really want to make a video on that. And of course, one that would be more dating related, as I've spent 2 years of my life writing a book about dating in Scandinavia. So I have a lot of thoughts on the subject. And the other thing is, as we grow older and as we keep doing the same thing, we evolve. The problem with YouTube, and a lot of creators share the same kind of issue, is that what once made us very excited not either no longer does, or we want to get deeper into it. And I'm in the second boat. I love the idea of culture. And when people say, "Oh, you're a dating expert," I always say, "No, no, no. I don't care about dating. I actually don't like dating. I mean, who likes dating nowadays, right? Like, really, it's terrible. But what I love is the idea of human connection. What I love is the idea of communication. How is that different around the world? What I love is going to a place and trying to understand the psychology of the people that live there, because culture plays such a huge role in shaping who we are. And I love the anthropological aspect to it all. And I feel like it's time to get deeper. And that's why in the recent few months, I've been itching to do something different. I've been itching to change it somehow. I still have the studio videos that I think they go very deep, and I love that, but I think it's missing the excitement of travel and also the face, like me being there to share my personal experience with you guys and my personal observations, and no filter, and very, very genuine observations that I have about different cultures. I think it's missing that. It's missing the person element. Unless you have the person element, anybody can copy your style. But as soon as people see you as someone that they can relate to and they can see the world through your eyes, then your channel really comes alive. So that's one of the reasons that I'm going to Sweden on my own poor budget to film a very different type of singles guide, or rather, maybe I'll call it something else. Not simply because it's cheaper to do it without a budget, but only also because I want to do it genuine. And of course, quality is going to be lost. But I've held on to the idea of quality for so long. I feel like I've let go of so many incredible opportunities just to, who gives a shit, just make a video and don't make it shaky, and get some nice drone footage and just post it. Just make something real. When I watch videos from my favorite vloggers, I don't look all the time, and if their camera's a little bit blurry, I look at the content. And that's something that I wish I figured out sooner, because quality can always be upped, but the content is what keeps the people engaged. And this is also why I decided to start a podcast. I've wanted I've wanted I've wanted to start a podcast for such a long time. I listened to a lot of podcasts. Jay Shetty, before he started interviewing these Paris Hilton and whatnot, I loved his podcast. Matthew Hussey, I love the way he expresses himself. When I listen to Matthew Hussey, I think, how can he be so articulate? I can't, you know, speak like that. I'm definitely not articulate enough. But then again, with practice comes perfect. You see, that wasn't even correct. Practice makes perfect. And mistakes are human. And it's just the act of being present and being on camera that, just doing it day in and day out. And that's how you get comfortable with it, right? So I've been like, oh, should I not? Obviously, there's no money involved with starting a podcast, at least in the beginning. But I always say, go with your gut feeling. You should be attuned to what your gut tells you. And my gut was like, this is the next step for you. This is what I want to do. And so, since it's the first one, since you've listened, and this was supposed to just be the preview of what the podcast is going to be, I'm really, really sorry, guys. I really went on a tangent here. But this podcast, in short, is going to be very much like the channel, except it's going to go way deeper. I'm going to have speakers, I'm going to have guests from all around the world, and we're going to talk about topics such as what, of course, dating is like in their culture, but what is happiness? Finns are said to be the happiest people in the world. What do Finns see as being happy? So, there are a lot of interesting topics that I want to get into and I want to explore that go way beyond just dating. And that's why the podcast is called Beyond Borders, because I don't want dating attached to this title, because I want to talk about life and problems and struggles and human experiences and stories and so, so, so much more than who pays on the date. And as I mentioned before, of course, dating is not limited to just who pays on a date. There's so many incredible, interesting aspects of it. But at the heart of it all is connection. And what I want to do from this point on, both in my YouTube channel and in my podcast, is to talk about connection, communication, differences between cultures, similarities between cultures, what makes us all human, what are we all struggling with? Are we all struggling with the dating scene right now? I think we are. And how do we all find love? How do we find happiness? This is what is so, so interesting to me. So, guys, thank you so much for listening to almost 40 minutes of this ramble of mine. But hopefully, by this point, you've got to know me a little bit better. You know who I am. And you are excited for all the incredible guests I'm going to have on this podcast and all the incredible viewpoints and all the incredible experiences that we're going to share. And hopefully, that's going to bring you a little bit closer to each other and helps you understand and will help you understand different cultures much more. So, that is actually my aim with this podcast. So, as usual, stay tuned. And yeah, guys, let's keep breaking down our berries. And this time with the new podcast, Beyond Borders.